Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is, well, we will be pretending for today's purposes that it is Friday, September 11th. That makes it, of course, the 19th anniversary, it being 2020 now, the 19th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. We are, of course, in the middle of our own rolling tragedy, thanks to no help from the presidency. Donald Trump, of course, in the process of killing some 200,000 of us in his non-response to the coronavirus pandemic. And now, of course, this tragic anniversary to mark. Trump, of course, with a long tradition of marking the occasion with the appropriate respect. In fact, marking the actual occasion with the appropriate respect, noting for the television viewing audiences at the time that he now was the proud owner of the second tallest building in Lower Manhattan, something, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, going on to steal money from the relief funds available for New York property owners affected by the attacks. But, hey, you know, that's just Donald Trump for you. Taking a guess, a wild guess, and it is pretty wild at this point, that by the actual Friday, by the time it rolls around in 24 hours or so, that nothing else in terms of confessions to capital crimes, I guess, will have happened from the White House or anywhere else where Donald Trump might position himself over the next 24 to 48 hours. And we'll just roll with the idea that things are going to be relatively stable between now and then. In the meantime, of course, trying to put this show together for you without falling too far behind in current events. Friday would normally be the time, of course, when we would check in with Ian Reifowitz, and we are set to do that in substitute today, now being it's Thursday for him and me, and we'll be doing this, rolling this for Friday for you. Plenty to talk about, as always, not only about his upcoming articles, but hearkening back to some of his earlier pieces, which we've discussed on, on last Friday, right, when we spoke with him about a situation now back in the news, his own coverage of the fearsome and growing problem of right-wing white supremacist terrorism in the United States. And you'll remember his piece, Trump is Making America Less Safe Right Now. That was last week. By ignoring right-wing white supremacist terrorism, I don't feel like we have gotten any more safe, not on that score or any other, in the week which has passed. But of course, now we have news of the Dhs Whistleblower Report, which apparently, gives us good reason to believe that we're even less safe than we thought we were last week when we were just looking at Trump ignoring the contents of the reports. Now it turns out that the contents of the reports themselves may have been manipulated, and certainly the availability of the reports seems to have been tampered with as well. So we'll give Ian a call and talk about that and whatever else might be upcoming from him on the front page or elsewhere at Daily Kos. So, okay, let's make that phone call. Oh, yes, I'm going to have to press all the appropriate buttons, and we'll see if my recalibrated alarm system actually makes it possible for us to time our breaks appropriately. It's a difficult thing to do when you're not doing it live, as Bill O'Reilly likes to say. All right, let's give Ian a call and see if we can't work things out from here on. All right, let's see. All right. Seems to be working. Good morning, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing well, David. How are you?
I'm fine, despite the time travel we're involved in here. We're pretending it's Friday for everyone's benefit here. Yeah, I couldn't be on the air for a live show on Friday, but figured I'd check in with you if you were available just after Thursday's show. So thanks for being flexible and being available for us.
You're welcome. And in order to continue our cultural references for men of a certain age, I'm well prepared because the other night I watched Back to the Future Part 2, and Doc Brown, had that wonderful chalkboard reference where he had the timeline and then timeline A, which diverged after all the terrible things happened.
All right. Well, that's our main reference for the physics behind time travel for everybody. I saw it was on.
Right?
Yeah. I saw it was on the other day, and I caught part of it. I did see an interesting reference. Someone else must have caught the fact that it was on, too, and I saw someone on Twitter saying, by the way, if they remade Back to the Future in the same way, like shooting it now and saying we're going to go back in time by the same amount, Marty would be traveling back to 1990, way back in 1997. Sort of a make you feel old kind of event, I guess.
A, oh my God. B, I recently read that they're working on a Back to the Future musical. I'm not kidding.
That's a hot thing to do. Just turn everything, the least likely possible thing, into a musical. And I don't know. I guess we're all bored after the coronavirus lockdown, and they'll finance anything at this point. We should all cash in on this somehow.
And as a sign of our age, I've already forgotten what C was.
Okay, that's true. So we got a number of problems plaguing us today. Not the least of which, as we discussed in what will, at the point when listeners are hearing this, be yesterday's show. Got it? So I don't want to confuse anybody here. Just sort of mired in we actually got distracted from the story, thankfully. I think mercifully distracted from the fact that the president, in what would be yesterday's show, now 2 days ago, essentially confessed to mass murder to Bob Woodward on tape. And that was a little disorienting for a lot of people, I'm sure. I don't even know how else to put it, except throw it open for your reaction to the fact that the president, for whatever, and take any aspect of this you like, whether it's what he confessed to or it's the fact that he sat down again with Bob Woodward and said, this time it'll go well. And I believe that. I'm not sure what's the most amazing part of it, but maybe you have a choice on that.
I think it's hard to compare in mathematical terms which thing is more amazing than the other.
Yes. I don't think you have to do it with any certainty, but I don't know. Maybe it's all amazing and just.
We could ask Doc Brown, but no, sorry. No, I mean, look, to me, it comes down to the American voters and what will they take from this? And, can they even, how many of them will say, my God, I really, whatever, but I got to vote against this guy. Mm-hmm. Or I was going to stay home because I don't see a big difference, but I'm going to vote against this guy. I like Joe Biden. I like Joe Biden more than I thought I would. He's not going to get people at this point to come out and vote for him who haven't already decided they like him. But we can get more people to come out and vote against Donald Trump. The more things come out, as the totality of things, I think, weigh on people. But my God, he admitted on tape that he knows how serious it is, even though right around the same time, he's out there saying it's no big deal. I mean, if that doesn't wake people up out of their stupor, then I don't know what will. Some of the people I think are going to be moved by the remarks about soldiers, which have been confirmed, have been confirmed to a reasonable enough degree by anybody. I mean, I have people I'm in contact with. Well, it's anonymous sources. Really? It's anonymous sources? Okay, there are 4 anonymous sources. And Fox News went out and confirmed the story with other people who are not one of the original 4 anonymous sources. But that's not enough for you, fine. Oh, and now, by the way, now we have a whistleblower who is not an anonymous source, whose name we know because he's public, and it was the director of intelligence for the DHS saying, oh, and by the way, Trump's people said don't mention the fact that Russia's involved in mucking with our election, and don't mention the fact that white nationalists, white supremacists are a security threat. Don't mention those things. I mean, my God, I don't think I could draw up a worse set of revelations about a sitting president. I mean, other than that, I don't know. He sold nuclear weapons to to Kim Jong Un. That maybe that would be. I mean, that would be worse. But I mean, I'm trying to think
so.
like within the bounds of reason.
Yeah.
This should be one of those elections. This should be one of those Soviet elections where it's 99-1.
Yes,
I mean,
I'm
not going
disappointed that it won't be, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sorry if you vote for Donald Trump after this, I have to question whether you care about America more than whatever it is that you care about that got you to vote for Donald Trump.
I guess so, and some of it will be share the white supremacist philosophy. Some of it will be perhaps QAnon-induced psychosis. I don't know, but I guess all things that we used to. We were told we should just put under the umbrella of economic anxiety.
And look, you mentioned economic anxiety, right? I don't want to make fun of economic anxiety because it's real. It's not
that's real,
right? Obviously. Yeah. And I think people who are economically vulnerable are, should be people who Democrats should be able to reach, because we believe in policies that will help mitigate that vulnerability, that will help provide some economic security by, for example, making sure that you have access to health care, even if you can't afford it and even after you lose your job, or that you don't have to pay the same level of taxes, because Democrats support expanding their income tax credit for those people who are working and unable to meet their economic needs. These are things that Democrats can do to help mitigate economic vulnerability. The question is, how do we, I think we know how to do it to some degree, but we have to reach those people where they are. And we've talked about this, and I've talked about this with Greg Dworkin as well. You don't want to pound the table and attack voters who maybe harbor some prejudices, but who also have some economic vulnerabilities, are voters we can reach. And that was, I'm going to say it again, that was the mistake of the basket of deplorables comment. Donald Trump is the deplorable we should be attacking as deplorable. The people who are supporting him, I'll question their judgment after the fact of the election, and I'll say, what the hell were you thinking if you voted for him? But right now, those people are people, at least some of whom we can get to vote for Joe Biden, and another 1%, another 2%. Ask Hillary Clinton if she wouldn't have loved to have had 1% more vote of Trump's vote in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. I mean,
yes,
come on.
That's true.
So attack Trump, yes. I would urge people listening. There's a terrific set of videos called the Race Class Academy. You can check it out on Twitter. Ian Haney Lopez, who I've mentioned before, has distilled the findings that he put into his book, Merge Left, about not just polling but about messaging. And it's very clear when you talk to when you pitch a message at voters that basically says racism is bad and you're bad, you're going to turn off voters. And if you pitch a message that is only economics focused and ignores the bigotry coming from Republicans, you're also going to lose voters. But what you need to do is pitch a message that is race, that ties together the race and class messages of progressives, that tells voters that Republicans are trying to divide us on race so that they distract you, middle class and working class voters, so that they distract you from the fact that their economic policies suck for you. Right? They want you, middle class and working class white voters, to be more scared about the brown people coming across the border or the black people protesting in the cities and maybe possibly doing other things. We want you to be more scared about them so that we don't know, so that you, the white middle class voter, working class voter, doesn't know that they're robbing you blind on health care or on taxes, right? That's how you talk about economic policy. You talk about economic policy in a racially inclusive way. You connect those things for voters. Please watch this race class initiative, and please, Democratic campaign people, watch these race class academy videos on Twitter from Ian Haney Lopez, because they're terrific.
Okay, well, that's a good recommendation. I'll certainly include some links to them if we can, so that everyone can easily find them. My own thing about, I bring up the economic anxiety tag. Mostly, my context for it is, I guess, in the normalization of Donald Trump file, where members of the traditional media and mainstream outlets sort of decided that the most, I don't know, useful for whatever reason for their purposes or tasteful way of representing what was motivating Donald Trump voters, to label that economic anxiety, which is a real thing, and then not bother to find out about some of the other very real and very distasteful things that were actually perhaps motivating or were at least more important to some of these voters, as demonstrated by the fact that Democratic policies would have addressed and alleviated some of that economic anxiety, whereas Republican policies would not only not address them, but exacerbate them. But they were nonetheless tempted to pull the lever for Donald Trump. You can't really attribute that to economic anxiety, and we've been waiting for years for people to come around to the realization in the media that, all right, well, it was maybe something else motivating them, but still waiting in most cases.
Right. Another, people are looking for reading recommendations is there's a book on the 2016 election called Identity Crisis. It's co-authored by John Sides, Michael Tesler, and Lynn Vavrek. And it's absolutely terrific analysis of how identity played into, Trump's victory. And they look at these people as, they look at the Obama-Trump voters, people who express essentially progressive economic views or progressive views on climate, but yet at the same time express some racially regressive views. They voted, many of them. These are people who voted for Obama with that set of views, and they were the ones who switched over to Trump. And it's fascinating that they voted for Obama despite those. These are, because that's what it comes down to, is people don't fall into, a neat box. Progressive down the line, racist and or reactionary down the line. They hold these, multiple views in their head at one time, many people, and it's just a matter of which one gets activated on election day or during a campaign, right? And that's to some degree what campaigns are good or not so good at doing. And Trump was successful enough to get close enough so that a unicorn like James Comey could give him, put him in position to draw the inside straight that he did. Had he not run the campaign that he did, and Comey still happened, he probably would have fallen up short. Had he run the campaign he did, and Comey kept his mouth shut and done everything he did exactly the same way, I still think Hillary would have won the election. That's what the polling showed. But she was vulnerable, and Biden, I think, is running a much stronger campaign so far. I think he's much better able to connect. I think, the fact that he's not from he's not from an Ivy League background, even though he didn't, even though Barack Obama, I think could connect to people in a working class way. Bill Clinton could connect to people in a working class way. Hillary, I think, had some trouble maybe. Biden, he seems to be able to do it. He's doing it reasonably well. He's not what Trump is. He's a good guy. And Trump is not. Yeah. And that's what all the things that are coming out from Woodward and the Atlantic and the Dhs Whistleblower, they all show the same thing, that this is a man who cares only about himself and his personal prospects. And he will say anything, do anything, ignore anything, lie about anything in order to benefit himself. And that's not a person we want as our president.
Yes. In fact, I got well summarized. I saw a tweet yesterday from, I guess, in the aftermath of the bombshell revelation. Keith Boykin, CNN commentator, who just used the opportunity to tweet around video of Adam Schiff's summations, I guess, at the impeachment trial. Just the good reminder. The quote being, of course, you can't trust this president to do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump, but that's about it. But yeah, that was quite a moment at the end of the impeachment trial that events of all sorts have kind of buried, which is amazing. An impeachment of a president you should never forget. We haven't forgotten it. It's just been, like I say, buried by subsequent bombshells. But that's true. And I think he said it even in a more poignant way. Maybe at that same point or later in the same speech, but you can't trust him to do what's right for this country. And you, even you Republican senators, you know it in your heart that that's the case, that he's not going to be there to do the right thing for the country. And you're going to vote to acquit him nonetheless. And I guess it shouldn't be lost on us also that this is also happening really at the same point at which the administration is briefing senators on the coronavirus threat. And the president really hasn't mentioned it publicly at this point, but he later, of course, comes out and downplays it, et cetera. But, for the senators, the administration warns them about the coming threat. And that motivates, I guess they said something to somebody. It motivated the Republican senators to go out and sell their stocks, motivated Democratic presidents to say, we don't appear to be getting the full picture here. There's something missing and we're just not prepared for this thing. And that's what Chris Murphy tweeted at the time, that he felt that he wasn't being given reliable information even then. But this is going on. Schiff is telling everybody at this moment, you're not going to be able to trust this guy. And then a few weeks later, right, Trump, when he is finally discussing the pandemic in public, it's the flu. Don't worry about it. It's going to magically go away. It's not going to come here. Warmer weather will kill it, et cetera, as this is all happening at the same time. And then, of course, his reopening plan being, we should pack the churches for Easter in a couple weeks. No problem with that. And then one of the other subsequent tapes with Woodward is taped April 13th, which is the day after Easter, is the one in which he says, you have no idea. This is so easy to spread and so infectious, you won't even believe it. He had just said everybody should be in church the previous day, and then secretly telling everybody, this is so infectious, we'll never stop it. I don't know. It's just amazing. I had to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, what will we learn tomorrow?
I don't know. And it is tomorrow. So I still don't know. That's bad news, too.
That's a line from a movie. I'm sorry. I can hear it in my head.
Oh, okay. I didn't recognize that one.
It'll come to me, but maybe not before we're done with our show.
Okay. If it happens in the middle, that's fine. Otherwise, we can include a link later on. So in the meantime, a lot less attention being paid. Poor whistleblower. Their whistleblower report didn't get nearly the attention it should have in the face of what Woodward's tapes revealed. But that relates back, as I had said in the opening of the show, to something we discussed last week. Specifically that there was word in the whistleblower's report, and I haven't had a chance to read through it yet. I only see what people are distilling from it. Word that there was essentially direct orders. Don't pay any attention to these right-wing white supremacist terrorists threatening America. The Department of Homeland Security officially not interested. I mean, what else can you do to endanger the American public? I don't know what else we can throw at it.
Right. I mean, in this, again, it's projection. He says Biden will make us less safe, blah, 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 because Biden is thralled to, this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, it's him.
Yeah.
He's making us less safe because his administration is in thrall to white supremacists and white supremacist terrorists even. I mean, look at, the way he talked about QAnon. Oh, they like me. I mean,
yes, that's enough for him.
Insane. If you want to know what Donald Trump is doing, look at what he accuses his opponents of doing. That's what he's doing. Easy trick. Right? If he's saying that they're going to steal the election, it means he's trying to steal the election. If they're saying Democrats are ignoring the threat of extremism, well, that means Trump is ignoring the threat of extremism. I mean,
it is pretty simple.
It is. It's amazing, right? I mean,
confounding.
It's just astounding. On the one hand, I can't wait to see Joe Biden tear him apart on the debate stage. On the other hand, of course, I'm still afraid because who the hell knows what could happen on that debate stage. Sure. But honestly, I think when I put my fears aside and I put on my, my thinking cap, how could anything that was said that is said on the debate stage really change anybody's mind, right? I mean, what are you really going to find out about these two guys information wise that you don't already know? You look at the polling. It is so steady, and I don't just mean the last 3 months. I actually happened to look the other day at the Real Clear Politics average going for Biden versus Trump going back to, I want to say mid 2019. I almost said 1999. Mid 2019. It's incredibly steady, and I did a little comparison to Hillary in 2016 because everybody's 2016. There were three. I want to say three different occasions where in Hillary versus Trump, she hit the 44% mark. She dropped down to 44%, okay, on three different occasions. And there were either two or three occasions where Trump was ahead of her, one right after the conventions, one in September. So this was a fairly volatile race. Biden has hit 47% once in 18 months. He's dropped to 47%, and his lead has never been less than 4 or 5% over Trump. A very different race, consistent enough that it really doesn't look like 2016. Hillary did not have the same kind of lead. Her lows were much lower than Biden's, and she hit them more often. Biden, as I said, hit 47% once. He only hit 48% a couple of times. And remember, I shouldn't say remember, because I'm the only one here who looked at them recently, but those are polls that don't add up to 100% because they don't count undecided voters.
Yeah.
Right? So you could add 3% if Biden gets half the undecideds. So if he's hitting 47 on those polls, he's really hitting 50, and you don't lose when you hit 50.
That would ordinarily become a big problem for him. That's true. We've got our first break coming up here. Let's. I'm hoping I've got this all timed out correctly. It's a bit of a crapshoot, so it's a little bit of a distraction as well. We'll take 2 minutes to regroup and be right back with more after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Hope we're timing our breaks right, and we'll see if we can't make this work. We're still with Ian Reifowitz. Let's see, we had been hearkening back to, I was trying to get back to and report a little bit, to discuss retroactively, having missed the opportunity to do it on Thursday, discussing the DHS Whistleblower Report. So we've used we've been able to pivot to it because Ian is with us and had just written on one aspect of what the whistleblower revealed, that it was ordered from above, that intelligence reports reflecting the reality of the danger of right-wing domestic white supremacist terrorism is being ignored, but it was only one of several subjects that they were ignoring. I don't know how, well, we'll just see, just sort of whether you're interested and comfortable in discussing it. But DHS is just a huge operation, maybe too large really for its own good. And but it's a great moment to point out just how dangerous it is if you put an incompetent ideologue in charge of it. Oh, and you, by the way, and you do so illegally, and he's not really the acting director at all. First of all, just working with an acting director is probably a bad idea. Then an illegally appointed acting director, definitely bad on top of that. But here's the damage you can do. In addition to ordering the intelligence community, at least the DHS's, where DHS exerts control, ordering them off of the subject of right-wing supremacist, white supremacist domestic terrorism. Also ordered them to, distort intelligence findings with respect to infiltration of the United States homeland by so-called known and suspected terrorists via the southern border. This was, I guess, the least noted aspect of the distortions ordered by Wolf and the rest of the administration. I guess to justify the construction of the border wall, which is yet to happen, of course, and immigration policy on the southern border in general. And I'm not certain if were you familiar with this one? Did this one catch your attention? Did you have a chance to catch up on it? It sounds like they were saying, okay, great. Because I'm still racing to catch up with this. Were they essentially ordering them to just fake up statistics of some kind, like we're catching dozens of terrorists because of our policies, or what exactly was it?
What I read earlier this morning was that the actual number of potential terrorists they had caught was 3, but that the Trump folks, I don't remember if it was Wolf or Ratcliffe, said, why don't we bump up that 3 a little bit to some, to a number with many more digits.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was, I'm trying to remember, I read it a couple hours ago. But yeah,
over 3,700. They went higher than that. I thought.
I was going to say 3,700, but I was like, it couldn't have been that many.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
300
right,
would have been
both
crazy.
thinking the same thing. 3,700. It's not like he went from 3 to 12. 17, 23.6, 100, 30 frickin' 700.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many times that, but I would have thought 300 just because. Well, let's turn the 3 into 300. What about 3,000? What about 3,000 plus a couple of extra 100?
Could have multiplied it 9 times for another cultural reference for you there. But no, not 9 times.
9 times.
1,233.33 times for all you math folks out there. And yes, I did that in my head.
Wow. Okay. Well done. I wouldn't have approached even trying, but that's just one. That's the least discussed so far. But just to give you an idea of the scale of the fraud here, that's incredible all by itself. And then that was one of 3 areas that I understood that they were faking up their information. The other one being suppressing any intelligence assessments of, something that we're all concerned with right now, and we keep saying is going to happen again, Russian interference in the upcoming election. So not only suppressing any information developed by the intelligence communities about that, but instead, let's start accusing China and Iran of doing this thing that the Russians are known to be doing. And it's entirely possible that the Chinese and Iranians are, in fact, seeking to interfere in the election because they just watched the Russians be able to do it and probably thought, why should we not steer the American elections in our direction? But
I'd love to ask the governor of Florida, DeSantis, say, listen, Governor DeSantis, I'm going to give you 2 choices. The Russians will interfere, in the counting of ballots, and Trump will win your state, or that will not happen. There will be no interference, and Biden will win your state. The fact that I'm not sure which of those 2 things he would choose is scary beyond belief and infuriating beyond belief, because these are people who don't care about America. They only care about having power in America.
Yeah. I mean, it leads me to believe that they would simply say, I'll take Russia plus Trump.
Yeah. I mean, they don't even say that, I want the American people to have a Trump. No, they would absolutely, there's no interest or concern about the principle of democracy and self-determination. Think about self-determination. Think about what that word means. That's the word that fired the American Revolution. No taxation without representation. We want to have We want to be a self-governing people. Well, sorry, folks, if Russia is counting the ballots, then we are not a self-governing people.
Yeah, well, I think by definition, sure, unless we're after that long sought-after overt political union with Russia to own the globalists, of course. Just and I mean, I don't think anybody actually has that in mind as their end game. Even the Russians wouldn't really particularly enjoy having responsibility for political administration of the United States. They just want to screw things up. But yeah, there's no way around it. How do you, what is there? What that you like? What is it that you, Ron DeSantis, like about America, given that it's run by Russia? What's like the number of flavors of ice cream available? Is it the television programming choices that you hope will continue? There's nothing about any of the things that anybody claims to love about America that are preserved if you don't get to determine your own direction. And no matter how you cast your ballots, Vladimir Putin says who your leader is going to be. I don't get it, but it's not supposed to make sense. They get appointed as political commissars for their area of the United States, and they can fix speeding tickets for their friends, and they get a limo. So I guess that's enough for them.
What more do you need? You're with no principles.
Yeah, I guess so. That's well, that seems to be a popular model. I don't know. Trump has a club full of people who absolutely believe that. I spent a little time diving into the Mar-a-Lago circles in yesterday's show. Astounding to find the same thing over and over again. Is it basically if you have a fancy car and maybe dresses and a fur for the little woman, as I'm sure they like to say it that way, and you can make it to all the A-list parties in Palm Beach, which is a very weird set of A-list parties. I don't think any of us would have a good time at one of those. It's not a Hollywood party. We might be out of place there too, but at least we'd be interested in seeing those people. The Palm Beach A-list party is quite a scene, and one that I think most Americans would be shocked to even learn actually exists. They're definitely in their own bubble, but you definitely can define it by what material goods have you got to show off here. And that's kind of how you get into the club, but he works that way, and I guess Ron DeSantis wishes he was in the same spot. I got a limo and some armed guards, and can steer some money my way. I guess it's all right if Russia runs it.
Yeah, as long as he's getting paid. I mean, look, we know Trump's whole career is built on resentment. He wanted to be part of the Manhattan elite as opposed to, the outer boroughs. He has, built this whole political path on resentment and humiliation. I actually really liked Tom Friedman's piece the other day in the New York Times, Politics of Humiliation. I don't know if he discussed it, but it was quite interesting. I definitely urge people to take a look at it. It looks at how, all politics is essentially identity politics, and the connection there is humiliation. You're motivated by the people who you feel are fighting against your humiliation, and that's what Trump is doing for the people who support him, at least to a good degree, except for the fat cats and the rich people who are laughing at, and they're laughing. They're laughing at the people who are out there, who would need health care and who need unemployment benefits and yet vote for Donald Trump. The people who are actually, the sliver of people who actually benefit from Donald Trump's policies are laughing.
Guess they have to be. They can't believe it worked, probably, is part of it. Although I suppose after a while, I would hope, I would think you get used to it. Everything goes my way. I cheat.
Right. Well, no, you make everything go your way because you're a stable genius or, whatever. You have talent. Look at the words Trump likes. He talks about talent. Singing is a talent. I mean, this is not a talent. Bureaucracy is not a talent. It's called hard work. And it's called using your skills to analyze information and having sound judgment. Talent is something maybe you're born with, but it also has to be something you develop. I don't see Donald Trump ever having worked hard to develop anything. He pays people to take his SAT, and he avoids hard work whenever he can, because he'd rather be watching TV. He even said, "Oh, this job is so hard. Oh, I wish I'd stayed. I wish I'd had my easy life." No sense of but I'm here to serve the American people. Oh, boy, I'd rather be at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, just listen to him.
Go. Yeah. Well, he's been lounging his way through this job too, although complaining the whole time about how hard it is and how much he's sacrificing for the good of the American people. It's still their claim, and still his kids' claim, that they've sacrificed billions of dollars in personal wealth to do this. Which, of course, they're only doing it so that they can steal billions of dollars and convert it into personal wealth. But they can't have you find that out, so they tell you the opposite.
And he said how lucky we are to have him as president. Could you imagine John F. Kennedy saying, how lucky you are to have me as your president? Imagine that. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to serve. It's a responsibility to serve. Sure. But we are not lucky. We are not lucky to have any president. We're unlucky to have him. I mean, let's be clear about that. And he also said, he could make money off running for president. Remember, he said that. I'm sure he did. Right. I saw some of what Michael Cohen has had to say in recent days. I mean, he definitely did not expect to win and expected to use his candidacy to set himself up to make some kind of deal with Vladimir Putin on real estate. I mean, that's what, not that I believe everything Cohen says, but that certainly comports with Trump's actions as regards to Russia. And maybe that's where he's still thinking, he's only, if I lose, hey, I can still make those deals with good old Vlad for some kind of mall development in downtown Moscow. Who knows what he's thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. I do question that now at this point. It would be a great result, at least. Okay, so 1, fantastic if he loses. 2, fantastic if he agrees to leave office. That's another thing we have to worry about. And 3, it would be really something to watch him then say, all right, well, so I'll turn to the next chapter of my life and develop real estate in Moscow in partnership with Vladimir Putin, only to have Putin say, you're worth nothing to me now. Get lost. There's no mall coming for you. Forget it. I'll take that money. Although I'm not certain that it comes out that way, because I'm sure at some level it would be valuable, I'm sure, to Putin to say, yeah, we'll develop something and put the Trump name on Moscow. One, that would be, I imagine, a huge PR coup for Russia to say, yeah, Russia, Moscow, is where former American presidents go to make it big. You see, they don't, the old model of them giving speeches to university commencements and opening their libraries is done. The real action is in opening casino, strip club, rib joints in Moscow, or whatever it is that he manages to put his name on there. So I'm not certain that it's valueless, but it would be great to see him just disowned by Putin. Hey, I'm done with you. You no longer control the United States government. I'm not interested.
Would be just desserts. On the other hand, Russia could be the place that former presidents go to escape prosecution.
True. Also, yeah.
And maybe Trump could, he could room with Ed Snowden. I mean, there's all kinds of ways this could play out. If you're Vlad and you've got all the power, maybe you trot Trump out as your, essentially as your, your puppet. And I don't mean, right, the way that Trump falsely accused Hillary, you're the puppet, right. But like literally as his puppet, like literally, to humiliate America. Oh, I've got your former president here. I mean, who knows what Putin would do?
Oh, that's true. I wonder how much concern it could. That'd be an interesting situation. I don't know if he could try to blackmail us with it. Like, send $1 million or I'll kill your ex-president. Okay, I'll send you the $1 million if you do. But I don't think that there's any. But it would be certainly a public relations coup to trot him around, and I don't know. Somehow Trump would probably enjoy the idea, especially if he was in fact, on the lam to escape prosecution. Nothing would make him happier than have safe harbor from which to, make videos, laughing in the face of international efforts to bring him to justice. But okay, I don't mind if he. I guess we should consider the possibility that he spends his last days doing that, and as long as they're his last, I guess I I could learn to get over it. But
I think we all could.
All right. Well, seems a little speculative, I suppose. But I do wonder what he might have in mind for himself post office if he in fact plans to leave. I've read enough nightmare scenarios about him trying to stay. It might be just as big as a nightmare if he decides to leave. At least we get our government back, but we have I'm sure, a new headache to live with. There's no chance. I don't see him going back to, well, he never lived a quiet, private life. So what would be the point in speculating whether he would return to a quiet, private existence now? He cannot live as a private individual.
No, he's a person who needs the spotlight.
So, well, we ought to start thinking about that possibility. Although, again, if he's out of office, I suppose there's very little we can do to control it, and maybe not our problem. But we'll certainly be living with the repercussions for long enough. And I don't even know when we would be able to. I guess we couldn't extradite him from Russia, nor would any other country accept our agents in the hopes of intercepting him elsewhere, because we're all sick with coronavirus still.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Well, I hope there's a point. Not only so that we can, extricate Donald Trump, but for other reasons as well. I hope we have a vaccine, a safe vaccine.
Yes, right. Well, that should be some time in coming, and eventually it comes around, or some sort of treatment, I'm sure, and at least a coordinated federal response could help tamp down on the continued spread and the virulence. Although, who knows? There are some Republican governors who might insist on carrying water for Trumpism going forward, and I suppose that's something we could consider, the possibility that Trumpism continues among, I guess, prominent Republicans, governors, senators, etc., who are hoping to pick up his mantle and run in 2024 and claim to be the legitimate successor to Donald Trump if his kids don't capture that mantle themselves, I guess.
But and to bring this back to Woodward, this Woodward business, the tapes, especially the tapes about what Trump said about COVID, sort of are the perfect bookend, right? We watched Trump botch the response to COVID, and now we know that he botched it on purpose for political reasons, and we have a recording of him saying it. I like to downplay it. I still like to downplay it. That, to me, seals the deal. There's no way that COVID is not the number one issue going into the election, because it's not just about performance; it's about intent and corruption of the moral kind. That you did what you did on purpose. There's no way he can avoid that. No way he can avoid that. Even if COVID numbers come down, and God knows, I hope they continue to improve from the worst levels that they were at a couple of weeks ago. We want people to live. Even if they improve, even if there's a vaccine, Trump has already, by this virtue of these tapes coming out, we're inoculated against any kind of, I think, shift in opinion on Trump, because we know what he did in the moment, and we heard him say it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that will help undermine, I suppose, his plans for rolling out a vaccine, whether it's real or not, whether it's effective or not. But even if they were to be able to manage to come up with something that was safe and effective and available for use immediately before the election, that's true. It knocks the pillars out from underneath it. It's great that there's a vaccine. Not that anybody thought you were in a lab coat working on it, but it's nice that there is one. It's nice that you were hoping it would happen, but we do have you on tape saying, this is going to be a huge disaster, and I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to tell people the opposite. And I don't know how many people will be, thrilled about the opportunity to thank him for bringing us this miracle vaccine, when in the meantime we certainly could have had a lot fewer people dying from it. And you want to know a great way to dampen panic about a virus is if fewer people catch it and fewer people die from it. But apparently that never occurred to him as a path toward keeping the panic under control.
Right, or making people feel assured that their government takes it serious, or that we can trust information coming from the government, or that we could do what we need to do to shut down quickly, so that we could actually come back from the shutdown more safely and more quickly, as opposed to what this sort of haphazard thing we've done. When I see 250,000 cases coming out of Sturgis, coming out of that biker rally, where you have that Trumpite South Dakota governor, Christine Noem, saying, "Oh yeah, we want everybody to come." Now South Dakota has the highest rate of positive testing in the country. This is South Dakota, right? You want to have an experiment? What happens when you take an area that's relatively isolated, that not a lot of people are traveling to, and then you flip that, have lots of people travel there, and then boom, you got cases out the wazoo.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. How many more facts do you people need to see that Trumpism is a lie?
No, there are just people who will refuse to see it. There is no answer. It's null set, and can't go forward with those guys. There's nothing. I mean, they have at the ready a magical theory in QAnon, if they choose to lean on that, that it's all upside down. All the facts that you're showing me are fabrications. I don't personally have COVID, and even if I did, it would be because the deep state gave it to me to try to prove that I was wrong when I was really the one revealing the truth, that it doesn't exist. I don't know what that means. That doesn't make any sense. It's not logically consistent internally. Doesn't matter. The answer is Q. All right?
Yeah, they
I don't know what to do with
my
it.
pizza when I was getting it from John Podesta.
Yes, right. So, I mean, I suppose there's little point in trying to figure out what it would take for somebody like that to come around. But yeah, really, honestly, nothing would have done. A normal person, a normal president would have said, even if this situation is beyond our control, the thing that calms panic is to say, we're on it. I'm doing something about it. I know we would love to have a magical cure, but I'm working day and night. We have a panel of competent experts who will do the briefings telling you what's going on in scientific terms, not me. I won't get on TV every night for 2 hours and complain. And, like you guys are looking for a medical solution to this. But let me tell you what a dope Joe Biden is and how sleepy he is. All right, well, I'm losing confidence as you do this. I can't figure out what made you thought that this was going to work for me. And then watching video of you golf every weekend. How was that supposed to help me? Golf in a lab coat. I don't know, something. Show me something. Be on the phone on the golf course like you're consulting with experts. But nope, that somehow, I don't know, maybe in his mind he thought, if I'm relaxing, that's because I'm confident that experts are working day and night elsewhere to do something about it. I don't know. I suppose that's a spin you could put on it. But then again, we have tape of him saying, nah, that's not what I was doing. I was just, I thought it would be like with my condos. They're falling apart and you need to sell them. I'll just tell them that they're super luxury and everything is awesome. And all the fabulous Hollywood celebrities have bought condos here. You'll be neighbors with all your favorite celebrities. That turns out not to be true. People sue him over things like that. Oh, and when he's deposed in those suits, he just says, this is what you do as a real estate developer. You tell people good news about the stuff and you tell it. Well, what if it's a lie? Well, what if it is? And he just approaches the presidency the same way.
That's right. Tell the people what he thinks they want to hear. I will tell you one thing that would make me very scared would be to see Donald Trump in a lab coat, participating in some way in the vaccine. Oh, my God.
Oh, that's true. We have seen pictures of Ivanka in a lab coat pretending to be conducting an experiment. Not related to coronavirus, I don't think, but at some point, in her. What am I this week? Oh, yeah, I'm the chief ambassador for women in STEM. So give me a lab coat and some safety glasses and some colored water, and I'll pour it from one test tube into another, and boom, I'm a scientist. She actually pulled that stunt. I mean, it didn't work for anything, but I've got the photos. We've got the tapes and the photos at this point. All right. Man, I don't know. It just feels like this is a story that we just had to riff on for a while. and there was no way around it. I appreciate your indulging us on this. We are coming up shortly to what will, if things work out, be our second break, but we do have a couple of minutes. You want to preview at all what you have coming up? I know you shared what will likely be your next publication at Daily Kos. I mean, we'll save discussion for it until after it goes through the editing process, but maybe a tease for people to keep an eye out for it.
Sure. So I'm going to be writing about another aspect of the historic nature of a Kamala Harris vice presidency. In addition to the most obvious, having a woman as vice president, as well as having a woman of color, somebody who is black, as well as Indian American. She's also part of an interracial and interfaith marriage, and there's a lot to unpack there that people, I think, can feel good about. There is, a sense of representation that people will feel, and I think it's an interesting thing to look at. And so I look at some of the questions that were raised, some criticism of her, and how she's dealt with it, I think, quite effectively. Because not everybody, sadly, I should say, not everybody greets an interracial marriage with open arms, but she, I think, has done a very good job of dealing with the few critics that have popped up. And it's it's largely, I think, a piece that people can, feel. It's another thing that I think most progressives can feel good about when thinking about a.
Well, I hope so, and I'll be looking forward to seeing about it. I had almost forgotten until her announcement as vice president that was a major aspect of her life, and I guess during the convention, it's the job of the convention to give us the bio, and that'll be something that's worth examining. I will look forward to discussing it a little bit with you, perhaps next week. Thanks again, Ian, for coming by. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right. Well, again, thanks to Ian Reifowitz for joining us here. He's still with us just to wrap up, because it always is an awkward thing when you want to sign off properly and thank everybody. And, of course, let everybody know what's coming up and get the obligatory book plugs in. They're good books. It's no small thing. So let's we'll say goodbye for now, but we'll see you again next week. And let's see, anything else that we want to throw in there in between, or we can get right to the book issues. Oh, okay, a little production anomalies in the background here. It's allergy season for us here. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so we'll catch up with you again next week. And in the meantime, if you find yourself pining for more and have not yet caught up with Ian's publications, let's remind everybody the titles and availability.
Well, sure. So, I'm on Daily Kos. You can find me there. You can follow me on Twitter under Ian Reifowitz. And the book is The Tribalization of Politics: How Rush Limbaugh's race-baiting rhetoric on the Obama presidency paved the way for Trump. And it's available through your typical online booksellers like Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And you can always try to get it from an independent publisher, which I think helps us.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Independent bookseller, which always helps. And David, I always have a good time. Thank you for having me on, and I'll look forward to next week. All
right. Well, we'll do it more in regular fashion. I appreciate your flexibility today, not only putting up with the odd timing, but the odd production issues that come along with trying to do something like this. I appreciate it. It's tough. So thanks again. Take care, Ian. And we will speak to you next week. All right. So let's see. We'll move on from here. Plenty to catch up on, of course. And let's see. Now at the top of the segment is always an excellent place to try to fit something like this in. I mentioned for what was for you yesterday's show that our friend Darwin Darko had chimed in again with a selection from his favorite paper of record, Stars and Stripes. We never did get around to discussing the weird crisis surrounding Stars and Stripes, but the crisis was undone in a desperate bid for military love and affection by Donald Trump at the last minute, and I guess it should have been anticipated, and it was anticipated. Somebody made a fantastic prediction about it. I wonder if I can dig that up while I'm rolling Darwin's piece, reading through, I guess it's more than one article, on issues surrounding the service by transgender people in the military, catching us up on where we stand on this subject and what Donald Trump is doing to ruin everything for everyone. Darwin?
Hey there, David. Thanks for including my segment this time around. Hope you're doing well and staying safe during the quar. I'm going to be updating folks on some transgender issues in the military. First, I'm going to start by going through this article here from NBCnews.com from April 11th, and also following through with this issue of Stars and Stripes from Friday, August 7th. Starting here on NBCnews.com. This article is by Julie Moreau, titled Year After Trans Military Ban, Legal Battle Rages On. So in the year since Donald Trump and his administration has banned transgender individuals from serving in the military, a number of advocacy groups have challenged the policy, and many active service members say they have been forced to choose between continued service and their dignity and basic health care needs. When the administration implemented the ban in April 2019, it ended an Obama-era policy that allowed trans men and women to serve openly and to receive transition-related medical care while enlisted. Current policy allows service members who received a diagnosis of gender dysphoria prior to April 2019 to continue to serve in their preferred gender. Any currently serving troops diagnosed after that date must serve according to their sex as assigned at birth and are prohibited from seeking transition-related care. Prospective recruits who have received a gender dysphoria diagnosis are barred from enlisting or enrolling in military academies. So that's just an update, you folks, on how that policy went there. What the policy does, Maxwell added, is it ends presumptive accommodations for people with gender dysphoria, which she referred to as a serious health condition. And this I skipped the name here. This Maxwell they're talking about is Jessica Maxwell. She's a Defense Department spokesperson. So a number of LGBTQ advocacy groups are challenging the Pentagon's policy and its justification for restricting the military service of transgender individuals, and 5 of these challenges are currently in the courts. So the article then goes through a history of the ban. I'll skip past that and get to the legal challenges if you folks want to read up on it. The article again is called Year After Trans Military Ban, Legal Battle Rages On NBCnews.com. So later on in the article, we continue with the legal challenges. So in January 2019, the administration leapfrogged to the Supreme Court, which ruled 5-4 to stay lower court injunctions and allow the ban to go into effect. Kara Engelhardt, an attorney at Lambaugh Legal, working on one of the cases, Kronowski versus Trump, called the Supreme Court decision disappointing, but said the High Court has not yet heard the merits of the case. She pointed to the U.S. District Judge Marsha Petchman's December 2019 ruling requiring the government to turn over some 35,000 documents cited in its decision to ban trans service members. The judge said the plaintiffs were entitled to all the documents and information used to justify the administration's restrictions on trans service members. We currently are in the thick of discovery and moving towards as if we are going to trial, Engelhardt said. Jennifer Levy, the director of the Transgender Rights Project at GLBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, or GLAD, they could have led me with the GLAD there instead of setting me up like that, says she's confident the ban will be found unjustifiable. We anticipate trials where the court will evaluate and see quite clearly the absence of any rational justifications or any legitimate justification of the ban, she told NBC News. There is no justification for banning a group of people from serving in the military who can meet all the generally applicable standards. It undermines the concern for the stability and strength of the military. So right now, members are serving under a cloud of otherness. The transgender military ban affects both active personnel and prospective recruits. It's disheartening that the President of the United States has taken an opinion on my fitness to serve in the military without knowledge about what makes me and so many other transgender people just as good candidates to serve in the military, said Ryan Kronowski, one of the plaintiffs of the suit brought by Lambaugh Legal. At 25, Kronowski has an MA in social work and is pursuing a PhD in social welfare at the University of California, Berkeley. He hopes to be given the opportunity to apply his skills to a health services career in the military. The ban has been frustrating, but I'm refusing to look at it like a setback, he said. According to Englehart, the ban continues to be a source of concern and frustration for clients like Kornowski. One of the other plaintiffs in the case with Kornowski is a woman known as Jane Doe. She chose anonymity because she remains in active service. She did not come out as transgender prior to the implementation of the ban last April. Because she didn't do that within the artificially imposed window, she is now prohibited from doing so without the loss of her career. Englehart said she is not being able to make that choice for herself without risking her career and the livelihood of her family. While there are openly transgender people serving in the military currently, Peter Perkowski, legal director of the Modern Military Association of America, a nonprofit organization advocating for LGBTQ service members and veterans, they're doing it under a cloud of otherness. I'm going to move on here to a little bit, this is a pretty long article, so I'll move on a little bit to talk about the next steps that they highlight here. So the policy could be changed through the courts, but the slow nature of litigation and current composition of the Supreme Court leads some advocates to believe redress is more likely through Congress or the ballot box. I'd say that is probably going to be the most likely thing to happen here. Our message right now is that the only way this changes is with a change in administration. But that doesn't stop us from working with our members of Congress, Drummond said. Levy said the challenge to this military ban has just highlighted how wrong it is to exclude people because of who they are. So just a quick jab at those folks, a personal jab at those folks out there who always say the Dems and the GOP are exactly the same. There's no difference. When you're making your vote, if you don't really care for yourself, you feel like you're not affected for yourself personally, maybe think about voting on behalf of someone else and the dangers that happen when somebody like the current administration is in and the damage that they're doing to people like the transgender folks of the military, who are going through this entire situation that I just read there. So if you're not going to vote for yourself, maybe vote for them, brother's keeper, brother, sister's keeper, all that good stuff. So moving on to the Stars and Stripes episode, we have a specific person here and his name is Nicholas Talbot. And so this title is entitled Transgender Americans Get Hope on Military Ban. Last spring, Nicholas Talbot quietly left the Kent State University ROTC program. He had hoped he would earn him a commission in the U.S. Army Officer Corps and fulfill his dream to serve. After a year, though, in the Army's officer training program, that dream died. Died basically in April 2019. So the Pentagon, after more than a year of court-ordered delays, implemented a policy that they ordered by President Donald Trump, barring almost all people like Talbot, transgender Americans, from military service. Though Talbot knew the policy was likely to come, Trump had issued surprise tweets in 2017 announcing his intention to bar transgender people. It left Talbot devastated. So lawmakers have renewed efforts to end the Pentagon's ban, and LGBTQ community advocates have shared policy plans that would allow the Defense Department to do so quickly if it were ordered to reverse course. Talbot remained determined to join the military after Trump's early Twitter assertion. He signed onto a lawsuit against Trump and the government that resulted in the judge temporarily halting the ban. He had worked with a recruiter to join the Air National Guard before ultimately joining Army ROTC in fall 2018. Then came the new policy. Bolstered by Supreme Court ruling, then ended the federal judge-ordered injunction. It grandfathered transgender service members already serving and barred almost all other transgender people from joining. Talbot spoke with his ROTC chain of command. They made it clear he could continue to train in the program, but the new policy meant he would not be commissioned into the Army. It would just be a participation trophy. When everyone else would be guaranteed a job as an officer, I decided to take a step back and focus more on my education and just kind of re-strategize, Talbot said. I didn't want to put in even more time and money and effort for it all to be for nothing. Like others, he sees the signs that the policy might not last. The Democrat-led House recently passed legislation that would end the Pentagon's ban, and former Vice President Joe Biden and presumptive Democratic nominee for president has signaled he would reverse the Trump administration policy if elected. And again, here, let me make a plug. These are the types of things that even if you do get the person in office that you would want, you should still keep pressure on them to follow through. Because, right, as we just said, he hopes that, if Biden gets elected, this policy will change. No, let's not hope on it. These are the types of things you have to. We got you in office. We put you there. Now you go do what we do. The Republicans demanded of the constituents of these Republicans demanded of them and they take those actions. You see all the judges that they got passed. So when Biden, if and when Biden gets in office, it's on us, incumbent on us, to make it a priority for him to start reversing all this stuff. So in July, advocates and policy experts said the Pentagon's current policy could be reversed in just 30 days, distributing a memo that the potential Biden administration could use as a blueprint to reopen the military to transgender men and women who are qualified to serve. So 30 days, huh? Let's take a look at that. So the Palm Center, a research institute that studies LGBTQ inclusion in the military, issued a memo last month that would provide a Biden administration a blueprint. You listen to Biden, you got a blueprint and everything. You don't even have to do any work for it. You could just take credit. Provide him a blueprint to undo the Pentagon's current transgender service policy. Experts said the policy could be changed within a mere month. The Pentagon is often slow to implement policy alterations, taking time to run lengthy studies and train its force and guidance before issuing new directives. Palm Center Director Aaron Belkin said the Pentagon would not need to take such steps to reverse its current policy because most of the Obama policy remains intact, with troops already grandfathered under it. A big ship can take time to turn around. So often the Pentagon needs to study policies, changes, and move cautiously, he said. But this is the rare case where since the military left inclusive policy for already serving transgender personnel in place, even as it implemented its ban, the switch is just waiting to be flipped. The 8-page memo authored by retired Coast Guard Rear Admiral Alan Steinman, he notes that the Pentagon implemented 2 distinct policies for transgender people as it worked to satisfy Trump's demands. It left in place the 2016 policy protections for transgender troops, about 9,000. So thank goodness for, Trump's incompetence. A lot of the things that will probably be able to be reversed that he's done during his administration, just because of the sheer incompetence. Like David says all the time, show me the paperwork. So they identified themselves officially while implementing a separate policy in 2019, governing troops who have yet to identify themselves as transgender and transgender civilians. So Steinman, who served as the Coast Guard's top public health official, wrote in the memo that the Pentagon left all the necessary breadcrumbs to reverse Trump's ban. For example, the Pentagon has retained guidance that allows grandfathered transgender service members to transition while in the military. It also has retained guidance for commanders on gender transition for transgender troops. Meanwhile, non-grandfathered troops who are found to medically require a gender transition would be discharged. The path to restoring inclusive policy is based on erasing separate tracks of grandfathered and non-grandfathered transgender personnel and returning to a single military standard for everyone, transgender or otherwise. It's expected to meet, Steinman wrote in the memo. So consistent with decades of military research findings, the optimal framework would be to apply one standard to all. Nothing more, nothing less. That, Talbot said, well, we're back to our service person here. Well, he was in the ROTC here. Talbot said is all he has ever asked. He said he will continue to hope to one day serve his country. In the meantime, Talbot will continue to speak out against the Pentagon's current policy and to fight it in court. I'm not just going to sit in the background when I could be putting myself out there for the greater good, he said. If somebody has to put their face out there and accept all the consequences for that, then I am more than happy to do that to help the cause. So, again, this article is written by Corey Dickstein. I think I read several write-ups from him before. He is dickstein.corey@stripes.com and can be found on Twitter @cdicksteindc. My name is Darwin. You can find me on Twitter @Darwin_Darko. Thanks for listening. Back to you, David.
All right, thanks. All right, let's see. It reminded me the fact that we had another of your pieces or another of your finds from Stars and Stripes, Darwin. I thought of you the other day when the announcement came down that, or I guess word came from the Pentagon that they were executing the strategy that had been laid out, the elimination of funding for Stars and Stripes, which I think, I don't know whether it caught people by surprise or not, but at any rate, that episode, I guess, is now over. There was a backlash, and of course the timing couldn't possibly have been worse if there really was any interest at all in the Trump administration in eliminating this funding. Couldn't have been worse. It came in the middle of the blow up about Trump's own comments, the reality of how he actually felt about people in the services. And I guess he needed to do something in order to demonstrate some sort of interest in them, and reversed his own decision to do so, with a tweet insisting that, of course, Stars and Stripes would never lose its funding on his watch, even though I've got this tweet anyway stored away from September 4th, the date of all this, that all this went on. Paul Son from the Washington Post, just quoting Trump's tweet: "The United States of America will not be cutting funding to Stars and Stripes magazine," it's a newspaper, "under my watch. It will continue to be a wonderful source of information to our great military," capitalized G, capitalized M, great military. But Paul Son noting that the slashing of Stars and Stripes funding was proposed earlier this year in Trump's own budget request to Congress, which is probably why we felt we'd heard the story before when the news was revived in September. Like, your budget actually says that you were going to eliminate this funding. This was your idea. Of course, it's not really your idea. Presidents in general don't really necessarily involve themselves at that level of detail in the budgets that are put out by the White House. We've got people for that, and probably never more the case than with Donald Trump, although we are constantly admonished to remember that Donald Trump loves micromanaging things when he remembers that they exist anyway. So I don't know how much he had to do with it, but anyway, it's certainly fair game to say this was your White House budget said you were going to eliminate this. Pentagon was only executing your proposed slashing here. So now to pretend like you saved it, well, okay, that's Trump through and through, I suppose. Anyway, I guess good news, both for you, Darwin, and for Corey Dickstein, who gets to continue working at Stars and Stripes, and we get to continue to sample from his work through you. We appreciate your bringing us the news from Stars and Stripes and reminding us of the news that's important to active duty service personnel and veterans as well, and just people who are just generally interested in a fully functioning military, which you tend to lose sight of sometimes with the political focus of the show. So I definitely appreciate your unique perspective there. Thanks again. Okay, so shifting gears, we'll take a completely different tack before we run up against our next break. Here's a weird follow-up from yesterday's story about the various Mar-a-Lago Trump fancy party friends who had become ambassadors around the world. I didn't think I was going to spend any more time on this thing, but it's a real rabbit hole, actually, chasing down who all these people are and where they came from. You remember that I mentioned that one of the ambassadorships in the offing was for a Patrick Park, whose name was up for the job of ambassador to Austria. And, we wondered what are the various qualifications of the people being considered, besides the fact that they're Mar-a-Lago members. Are there any? Essentially, is the question. And we found a little bit in the background of, Robin Bernstein, who ended up as the ambassador to the Dominican Republic. She had served in a presidential administration before. But Patrick Park, I was having trouble coming up with anything for Patrick Park. I found a Yahoo article that gives us, I guess you could call this something like not a qualification, but a reason. All right, so here's the deal. I guess they grabbed this from Town and Country magazine, which is not where you really want to find these things. Donald Trump has reportedly picked his longtime friend, concert pianist, and this is the qualifications. You ready for this one? Sound of Music aficionado, Patrick Park, to be his ambassador to Austria. In an interview with the Palm Beach Daily Post, which I think where we hit upon all of this stuff originally, Park revealed that he has received unofficial confirmation of the position, as well as a note from President Trump, which read, "On to your next chapter, Ambassador." Spoiler here, he doesn't actually make it all the way through the process and end up serving as ambassador. He withdraws from the process at some point for, family reasons, and who knows what that may or may not actually mean. Anyway, it goes on, this article, to say, describing some of his background. My father was in the Air Force and my stepfather was a Navy man. That doesn't tell us very much. They served our country and the president. I would be thrilled to serve my country and President Trump if I have the chance. I've known this man for almost 20 years. Seeing the great things he has done makes me want to be a part of his team. I'm excited beyond words. Now, he goes on to say, perhaps some of this excitement stems from his love of The Sound of Music, the Julie Andrews classic, which is set in Salzburg. He says he's seen the film about 75 times, and he knows every single word and song by heart. I've always wanted to live in the Von Trapp house, he said. Now, the Von Trapp house is not the official residence of the United States ambassador. I suppose he could attempt to live there on his own, but it seems like an unrealistic expectation, don't you think? Park, like many of Trump's appointees, does not appear to have any previous government experience. In fact, it's quite common, though, for plum ambassadorships to be given to friends or big campaign donors, though the practice is sometimes frowned upon. But he seems to want to hit the ground running, having spoken to the Swiss and Hungarian ambassadors at the recent Red Cross ball at Mar-a-Lago. They want me to visit them in Washington, and the Austrian ambassador in Washington says he wants us to go to lunch. He's heading to Vienna soon to check out the embassy. Then he'll travel to Salzburg. Why else? To see if the Von Trapp house is for rent. Well, good luck to you there. Anyway, now you can do it as a private citizen. That's the good news. He did eventually drop out and ask for President Trump to withdraw his name from consideration. And if you really, really want to go down the rabbit hole, you can investigate who eventually became the ambassador to Austria. It went to a man by the name of Trevor Traina, I guess Traina. What can I tell you? I mean, if you take a look, blue-blooded as blue-blooded can get, I guess. Apparently, according to Wikipedia profiles, born in San Francisco, son of Diane Buchanan Wilsey, known as Dee Dee, apparently. Herself a bit of a Diane, and herself daughter of another society figure, apparently daughter of Wiley T. Buchanan, who was U.S. ambassador to Austria and Luxembourg, by the way. Austria went in his time, and White House chief of protocol under Dwight Eisenhower. Also pretty interesting. Anyway, the whole family up and down the line, a bunch of socialites making San Francisco, Newport, Rhode Island, Palm Beach, etc., their homes, chairs of the fine art museums in these fine cities, etc., etc. Just a little bit weird, you know, that there are such circles. Anyway, apparently the origin of the family fortune here, Diane Dow Buchanan, Dow Chemical, just in case you were trying to trace that back. It doesn't go back all that far, a couple of generations, but it's amazing what a little money can buy you for not only for yourself, but for generations to come. I mean, that's, I guess, the name of the game for these people. Protect that money and keep it forever and never, ever, ever, ever let anyone else in on the game. Trump, I guess, now trying to play the same game himself. Anyway, just a really fascinating rich person family here. His grandmother, Ruth Buchanan, only recently died at age 101, I believe, earlier this year. So, I don't know. Quite a storied family, and I guess it's a nice thing that the current ambassador to Austria is grandson of a previous ambassador to Austria, but not exactly, you know, the American ideal that we want to portray to those overseas. But Austrians understand dynasty, I guess. And I guess it's better than sending a person who shows up and says, my main qualification is, I've seen The Sound of Music 75 times. I would think that would be rather embarrassing, quite honestly. All right, time nearly up for rolling our music and getting into break number 3. So I don't know what, if anything, we can dive into just yet. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Maybe we switch topics yet again and head back to important background, that I had promised on Thursday's show that we would take a check back on the broader story of how Trump's billion-dollar campaign lost its cash advantage. Interesting. Maybe that's something of a follow-up. Whose cash were they losing, after all, if it wasn't these families who have been living on and dining out on, and dining in, for that matter, on the Dow chemical fortune for, 150 years now. Very interesting. Maybe that makes a good follow-up. That comes next after this. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Roots Radio. Let's dive into this one. There's about 10 other things I would love to fit in, but I still think this is important background. We'll start the article over again just to set the stage here. How Trump's billion-dollar campaign lost its cash advantage. Subheader reads, 5 months ago, President Trump's re-election campaign had a huge financial edge over Biden's. The Times conducted an extensive review of how the Trump team spent lavishly to show how that advantage evaporated. This is Shane Goldmacher and Maggie Haberman reporting this one. Take it with a grain of salt if you like. Money was supposed to have been one of the great advantages of incumbency for President Trump, much as it was for Obama in 2012, George W. Bush in 2004. After getting outspent in 2016, Mr. Trump filed for re-election the day of his inauguration, earlier than any other modern president, betting that the Head Start would deliver him a decisive financial advantage this year. It seemed to have worked, but they didn't wait until the end of the show, I guess, because now you find out it doesn't. His rival, Joe Biden, was relatively broke when he emerged as the presumptive Democratic nominee this spring, and Trump and the Republican National Committee had a nearly $200 million cash advantage. 5 months later, Trump's financial supremacy has evaporated. He burned it, of course, but they say evaporated. Of the $1.1 billion his campaign and the party raised from the beginning of 2019 through July, more than $800 million has already been spent. Now, some people inside the campaign are forecasting what was once unthinkable, a cash crunch with less than 60 days until the election, according to Republican officials briefed on the matter. Brad Parscale, a major source of this problem, I think, the former campaign manager, liked to call Mr. Trump's re-election war machine an unstoppable juggernaut. But interviews with more than a dozen current and former campaign aides and Trump allies and a review of thousands of items in federal campaign filings show that the president's campaign and the RNC developed some profligate habits as they burned through hundreds of millions of dollars. Since Bill Stepien replaced Mr. Parscale in July, the campaign has imposed a series of belt-tightening measures that have reshaped initiatives, including hiring practices, travel, and the advertising budget. I think that's about where we left off when we first started off on this piece. And now we continue. Under Mr. Parscale, more than $350 million, almost half of the $800 million spent, went to fundraising operations, as no expense was spared in finding new donors online. I think we did do this part. Okay. The campaign assembled a big and well-paid staff and housed the team in a cavernous, well-appointed office in the Virginia suburbs. Outsized legal bills were treated as campaign costs, and more than $100 million was spent on a television advertising blitz before the party convention, the point when most of the electorate historically begins to pay close attention to the race. Among the splashiest and perhaps most questionable purchases, a pair of Super Bowl ads that the campaign reserved for $11 million more than it has spent on TV in some top battleground states. It was a vanity splurge that allowed Mr. Trump to match the billionaire Michael Bloomberg's buy for the big game. There was also a cascade of smaller choices that added up. The campaign hired a coterie of highly paid consultants. Mr. Trump's former bodyguard and White House aide has been paid more than $500,000 by the RNC since late 2017. I don't think he even actually works there anymore. And of course, he's got bodyguards already paid for by the federal government, but whatever. He's also spent $156,000 for planes to pull aerial banners in recent months. That awesome method of outreach. And paid nearly $110,000 to Yondr, it's YONDR, a company that makes magnetic pouches used to store cell phones during fundraisers so that donors could not secretly record Mr. Trump and leak his remarks. That's really great. So they paid, $110,000 to buy magnetic pouches to force donors to stuff their phones into them during fundraisers so that nobody would leak out things like, I hate all black people and want to kill the whole military, or something like that. Some people familiar with the budget noted that Mr. Pascal had a car and driver, an unusual expense for a campaign manager. Mr. Trump has told people gleefully that Mr. Stepien took a pay cut when the president gave him the job. Critics of the campaign's management say the lavish spending was ineffective. Mr. Trump enters the fall trailing in most national and swing state polls, and Mr. Biden has surpassed him as a fundraising powerhouse after posting a record-setting haul of nearly $365 million in August. The Trump campaign has not revealed its August fundraising figure, although that was true at the time of the writing. I think we actually got that figure from Greg yesterday morning. Not that I can remember what it is, but it was considered relatively anemic, certainly for an incumbent president seeking re-election. If you spend $800 million and you're 10 points behind, I think you've got to answer the question, what was the game plan? Said Ed Rollins, who I would never trust with anything, but fine, he makes for a good quote. A veteran Republican strategist who runs a small pro-Trump super PAC and who accused Mr. Pascal of spending like a drunken sailor. But I'm pro-Trump nonetheless. I think a lot of money was spent when voters weren't paying attention, he said. I think a lot of money was spent when Trump wasn't paying attention, and Brad Pascal spent it on himself. But okay. Pascal, who is still a senior advisor on the campaign and thus still stealing money, said in an interview that the Trump operation invested heavily in attracting donors to erase the large advantage that Democrats had built digitally after the Obama years. Of course, that was several years ago, and then you won the presidency, but whatever. We closed that gap, he said, crediting early spending as the only reason Republicans are even close in terms of online fundraising. And they're not. So I ran the campaign the same way I did in 2016, probably your first mistake, which also included all of the marketing, strategy, and expenses under the very close eye of the family, said Mr. Pascal, who was the digital director, not the campaign manager, in 2016. No decision was made without their approval. Mr. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who has overseen the campaign from his position as senior White House aide, which is illegal, but whatever, had posed for a Forbes magazine cover as the person who ran the 2016 campaign soon after the election. Remember that? That was pretty interesting. Who managed the goddamn thing in 2016? Nobody knows. Everybody claims credit, though. Any spending arrangements with the RNC since 2016 were in partnership with Ronna McDaniel, Mr. Pascal said, referring to the party chairwoman, who's, actually a Romney, but whatever, who I consider a strategic partner and a friend. Mr. Pascal said on Twitter that the campaign spent less than $11 million on the Super Bowl ads. Not that that's so great. After moving one of them to the post-game portion of the telecast. Big money saver. Nicholas Everhart, a Republican strategist who owns a firm specializing in placing political ads, said the $800 million spent so far shows the peril of starting a re-election campaign just weeks after winning. A presidential campaign costs a lot of money to run, Mr. Everhart said. In essence, the campaign has been spending nonstop for almost 4 years straight. At the top of the whiteboard in Mr. Stephen's office are the latest numbers on the campaign budget, and Mr. Stephen had instituted a number of changes since he was promoted from deputy campaign manager. This all falls under the new section heading of reining in the budget, by the way. A proposal to spend $50 million in costs related to coalitions groups was cast aside. An idea to spend $3 million for a NASCAR car bearing Mr. Trump's name was discarded. Wise choice there, I think. The number of staff members, that wouldn't that have been funny in the middle of their supposed boycott of NASCAR because NASCAR banned the Confederate flag? I think they've forgotten about that boycott already, by the way. But that would have been really something. Pay $3 million to sponsor. I don't know if NASCAR gets any of that money, but it really would have been amazing to drive a Trump car around during the boycott. The number of staff members allowed to travel to events has been pared back to avoid what one senior campaign official described as sponsoring vacations. Not a bad decision there. Trips aboard Air Force One, popular because they enable aides to get FaceTime with the president, which would be disturbing in my view, but they love it. But which have to be compensated by the campaign, have also been slashed. The most important thing I do every day is pay attention to the budget, Mr. Stephen said in a brief interview. He declined to discuss budget specifics, but said the campaign had enough funds to win. So it's a very unglamorous job, and that's why they put Stephen in it. And he's willing to do it, and it's fine. And he'll make lots of friends among campaign staff. Well, not the staff who he's stopped paying for, but I guess among the family, saving the money. They'll enjoy that. Most visibly, the Trump campaign slashed its August television spending, mostly abandoning the airwaves during the party conventions. In the last 2 weeks of the month, Mr. Biden's campaign spent $35.9 million on television, compared with $4.8 million for Mr. Trump, according to advertising analytics. We held on to cash to make sure that we'll have the firepower that we'll need for the fall, said Jason Miller, the most disgusting person in the world and still in the employ of the Trump campaign as a senior strategist. Anyway, he contended that airing ads during the conventions would prove a waste for Mr. Biden. We want to make sure that we're saving it for when it really matters, when it's going to move the needle. Mr. Miller defended spending money on television ads earlier this spring and summer, calling it a tough decision necessary to keep Mr. Trump competitive as the nation suffered through a pandemic and its economic fallout. We had to claw our way back, he said. One of the reasons Mr. Biden was able to wipe away Mr. Trump's early cash edge was that he sharply contained costs with a minimalistic campaign during the pandemic's worst months. Trump officials derisively dismissed it as his basement strategy, but from that basement, Mr. Biden fully embraced Zoom fundraisers with top donors asked to give as much as $720,000. These virtual events typically took less than 90 minutes of the candidate's time, could raise millions of dollars, and could cost almost nothing. Mr. Trump has almost entirely refused to hold such fundraisers. Aides say he doesn't like them. And, no one does, but they're the things you got to do if you want to raise the money. And I mean, brilliant, actually, on Biden's behalf. Probably the biggest impediment to keeping a candidate's schedule is the time that it takes, one, to wrap up and get yourself out of the building when you're in a fundraiser, and then travel to another one. I mean, you're limited in how many of these fundraisers you can hit by how many you can physically get yourself to. If you're doing them by Zoom, you can schedule them for an hour. They cut off at a certain time, and, you only get a certain amount of time allotted to you. Unless you, I'm sure they are subscribers to the Zoom service and can tailor it their own way, but you can lean on that. And of course, there's zero travel time. You take a quick sip of water or whatever in between and then pop in on another one. You can get like 10 of these things done in a night. It's pretty amazing. But aides say that the president doesn't like that one. So, anyway. Door knocking to win over voters is the next section here. There is some disagreement in the extended Trump operation about the depth of any potential cash on hand shortage. Some officials believe that plenty more money will come in during the last 2 months of from online donors, and that cutting back on TV advertising in August was short-sighted. The campaign announced a combined $76 million haul with the party during the 4 days of its convention. Others said the campaign had expected the low-dollar fundraising to continue at the same pace, and were also counting on a significant number of $5,600 checks, the limit for direct campaign giving, that didn't materialize. That was in part because they rely on in-person events, which were more difficult with the virus. Some party officials defended the early spending as prudent, including money devoted to the expansive ground operation and an online network of donors that was setting fundraising records. The GOP has more than 2,000 staff members across 100 offices and claims that volunteers knock on 1 million doors per week, like Monsters Incorporated. The Biden campaign has foregone door knocking so far during the pandemic. The Biden campaign is hoarding money and hoping that fall TV ads will help put them over the edge, said Richard Walters, chief of staff for the RNC. But when a state comes down to 10,700 votes, like Michigan did in 2016, we think that direct voter contact, these millions of door knocks and phone calls that we make each week, is going to be critical. The Trump campaign has undertaken its own financial review of spending under Mr. Pascal. Among the first changes implemented was shutting down an ad campaign that used Mr. Pascal's personal social media accounts to deliver pro-Trump ads. More than $800,000 had been poured into boosting Mr. Pascal's Facebook and Instagram pages. Those ads ceased the day after he was removed as campaign manager. What an interesting system he's set up for himself, right? I'm going to spend campaign money buying followers and boosting the reach of my own personal social media accounts, and then I will personally buy ads on these social media platforms, and all the payments will have to come through me, and I'll be reimbursed by them, campaign for them all. Plus, I boost my own personal following that I can take away with me even after the campaign is done. Even if I survive all the way through the campaign season, this benefit now accrues to me personally. It's just interesting that they let him get away with that one. Mr. Pascal said the Facebook page was not my idea, so he's not even going to claim the brilliance of it. Blame it on someone else. And the family's direct approval had been sought on the program. Whose idea was it? Doesn't say. Did he get this direct approval? Probably. Whatever. I built an unprecedented infrastructure with the Republican Party under this family's leadership since 2016. I am proud of my achievements, and we'll see how proud he is when it's the blame being divvied up, or indictments for that matter. Some Trump-pleasing expenditures are considered next. Some spending choices appear devised, at least in part, to satisfy Mr. Trump himself, including the Super Bowl ads, which were purchased as part of an advertising arms race with Bloomberg, who didn't even win the nomination or come close. The 2 ads on game day cost more than the Trump campaign had spent on local television through the end of July in each of 4 battleground states. And you know what they are: Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa in this case, and Minnesota. Okay. Another Trump-pleasing expense, this one was great, more than $1 million in ads aired in the Washington, D.C. media market, a region that is not likely to be competitive in the fall, but where the president, a famously voracious television consumer, resides. He wanted to see his own ads. Mr. Trump, who once joked that he could be the first candidate to make money running for president, has steered, along with the Republican Party, about $4 million into the Trump family businesses since 2019. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to Mr. Trump's club at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. I think that's a low figure. Lavish donor retreats at Trump hotels, office space in Trump Tower, and thousands of dollars at the steakhouse in Mr. Trump's Washington, D.C. hotel. Many of the specifics of Mr. Trump's spending are opaque. Since 2017, the campaign and the RNC have routed $227 million through a single limited liability company linked to Trump campaign officials. That firm, American-made media consultants, has been used to place television and digital ads and was the subject of a recent Federal Election Commission complaint arguing it was used to disguise the final destination of the spending, which has included paychecks to Lara Trump, that's Eric's wife, and Kimberly Guilfoyle, that's Don Jr.'s girlfriend. as they say here, the partners of Mr. Trump's 2 adult sons. Well, they are his sons. Whether they're adults or not, open to question. Millions more followed to firms tied to RNC and Trump-linked officials, including more than $39 million to 2 firms. See if you can figure this one out. 2 firms. The first one is Parscale Strategy LLC. Who owns that? And Giles, I can't remember. I never did know how to pronounce the other name in this one. Giles, Giles, Giles Parscale. Huh. What do you know? Both controlled by Mr. Parscale since the beginning of 2017. That's so weird. I wonder where the money went. Mr. Parscale said that he had, quote, no ownership or financial interest in AMMC, that was American-made media consultants, and that he had negotiated a contract with the family for 1% of digital ad spend after becoming campaign manager and took no percentage. But whatever, all of the campaign's ads are bought through American-made media consultants, and for some reason they have paid $40 million to 2 firms named Parscale. Nothing to see here. Next up, you have to spend money to make money. That's a good way of ripping people off. There is little question that Mr. Parscale helped the Trump campaign construct an unparalleled Republican operation to lure small donors online. He directed a 9-figure investment in digital ads and list building that appears to have largely paid for itself. The problem is it didn't pay for anything else. Some of the president's advisors believe it will continue to pay great dividends in the final weeks, pointing to the $165 million raised by the president and his party in July, more than any month in 2016. You have to spend money to make money, right? That's the old adage, explained Mr. Walters, the RNC chief of staff. We have had big increases in revenue because of early investments we made in online fundraising and direct mail. Still, the costs of the GOP money operation have been enormous. Since 2019, Mr. Trump, the RNC, and their shared committees have spent $145 million on costs related to direct mail, almost $42 million on digital list acquisition and rentals to expand their list of email addresses, and tens of millions more in online and advertising for new donors. Just procuring the Trump paraphernalia that supporters buy costs a lot. 2 firms that make campaign swag were paid more than $30 million combined since 2019. At Mr. Trump's direction, the party has taken a spare-no-expense approach. That's usually going to get you in trouble. To donor maintenance, with the RNC spending more than $6 million in donor mementos. The spending has gone to stationery shops. The White House Historical Association got over $500,000. And the Hershey Company, the chocolate maker, got over $300,000, which cover costs for such items as the White House branded candies given away by administrations of both parties. Mr. Trump has also accumulated many costs that are unusual for a presidential reelection. Republicans, for instance, have been saddled with extra legal costs. That much we've learned. More than $21 million since 2019, resulting from investigations into Mr. Trump and eventually his impeachment trial. The RNC also paid a large legal bill of, this is an interesting figure, $666,666.67 to Reuters News and Media at the end of June. Interesting. Both Reuters and the RNC declined to discuss the payment. It was labeled Legal Proceedings IP resolution, suggesting it was related to a potential litigation over intellectual property. And I have seen it suggested elsewhere. The odd figure, $666,666.67, suggests that it is perhaps 2/3 of a $1 million settlement and somebody else paid the other third, or maybe they were asking for $1 million and they settled on 2/3 of it. I don't know. It's an awfully weird number. There have been other squandered costs driven by Mr. Trump's sometimes mercurial desires. He switched his convention plans twice, incurring many expenses along the way. In July, for instance, the RNC made a $325,000 payment to the Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island, near Jacksonville for the convention that never happened there. The party is not expected to get that money back. And that actually wraps it up. That's it's kind of an awkward ending. Things were just getting heated and exciting in this article, but I guess they ran out of additional facts to give us, and they never pay any attention to landing the plane in this thing. But okay. Anyway, some interesting backgrounds, interesting facts, and I think probably arms you pretty well to give context to the money woes and the various plays they make for money over the next couple of weeks. And I guess I'm predicting that a lot of weirdness and desperation will be in evidence, and I think we'll all be able to better understand it having rounded that information up. All right, perhaps just enough time to get to one other strange sort of money story. This is kind of an oddball one. Happened across this bit of, I guess, small-ish time grift that maybe turns bigger time somehow from Politico. Here's the headline: $2,933 for Girls' Night. Medicaid chief's consulting expenses revealed. Seema Verma, a member of the coronavirus task force, spent more than $3.5 million in taxpayer money on GOP-aligned consultants, a congressional report found. We have heard such accusations before about her spending. This part is the part that's a little curious here. Dan Diamond and Adam Cancrin wrote this piece up for Politico. When Seema Verma, the Trump administration's top Medicaid official, went to a reporter's home in November of 2018 for a girls' night thrown in her honor, taxpayers footed the bill to organize the event. $2,933. Not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but, fine if you want to have a girls' night. Although a little bit weird that an administration official has a girls' night thrown in her honor, for one thing, and done at a reporter's home in Washington, and then bills the government for the party. When Verma wrote an op-ed on Fox News' website that fall touting President Donald Trump's changes to Obamacare, taxpayers got charged for one consultant's price to place it, $977. Again, not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but more such stories down in here, just all over the place in this collection of these stories. It's just a weird thing, and you start to wonder, well, what was the deal about her going to a reporter's house for a girls' night party? And then our good friend NYC Southpaw on Twitter just let us know about this one. Very curious about the payment mechanics for this soiree, the girls' night held in her honor. Apparently, the reporter was USA Today's Washington bureau chief. A little bit more than a reporter, and in the grand scheme of things, and just all the more inappropriate, it would seem. But anyway, it turns out there's a name attached to that, Susan Page. He adds to this, who reportedly threw a girls' night in Seema Verma's honor at her house, funded by taxpayer money. This is an odd one. Susan is set to moderate the Kamala Harris-Mike Pence vice presidential debate later on in the campaign season. So also kind of a weird thing that she has Seema Verma over at her house and gets taxpayer-subsidized party thrown for her, and then is just going to, moderate the debate because she's a totally neutral figure. It should be pointed out at this point, in case you have forgotten, where Seema Verma comes from. According to NPR reporting from earlier in the administration, Verma comes to the job with extensive Medicaid experience, which is a good thing. Her consulting firm, SVC Incorporated, worked closely with Indiana Governor Mike Pence to design Indiana's Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act. So, just one of those weird coincidences where a USA Today bureau chief, Washington bureau chief, is going to be moderating a debate for the vice presidential slot later on in the campaign season, as between Seema Verma's former boss, Mike Pence, and that other person who never paid her any number of thousands of dollars to hold a party in her house for members of the Trump administration. But I'm sure that the debate will be moderated in all fairness, and no favoritism will be given. I don't know if there's anything really, honestly, that you could do to get in the way of Kamala Harris steamrolling Mike Pence on things. But Mike Pence, of course, I think goes into the debate with, one tactic and one tactic only. I'm just going to stand here and emotionlessly lie exactly as I've been trained, and our people will believe it. Everyone else in the country and around the world will be outraged. Anyone with any interest in ferreting out the objective truth of things will be outraged. But my people, Trump's people and my people, will be perfectly happy with my lying. And I don't even think you really needed to bribe Susan Page into allowing that to happen. That's just something that a USA Today bureau chief in Washington, D.C. is going to stand by and say, nothing I could do. But in the meantime, she had a nice party at her house, and the government paid for it. That's the most curious part of the whole thing. Anyway, we wrap things up now and hand it over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right. I can't tell you, of course, what's coming up on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, as this was a pre-recorded show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a good weekend. We will see you back here on Monday. I guarantee you that he's got an interesting and eclectic mix for you, probably including, maybe another mass murder plot by the president. You never know. Could happen. I might be right.